I'd like to call the Saline City Council meeting to order. If you please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, members present this evening are myself, Mayor Morrow, Council Members Gearboss, CO, McClellan, Mitchell, and Mayor Pro Tem Tahar. Why is Dylan's name mentioned on there?
It's on the end.
Oh, excuse me. All right. My apologies. We have a quorum present, and from city staff we have City Manager Campbell, Clerk Royal, Treasurer Bennett, Police Chief Rennick, City Superintendent Rubel, DPW Director Fordyce, Wastewater Treatment Plant Superintendent Skull, City Attorney Smith, Planner Atkins, and Parks and Rec Director Scruggs. Got a full house this evening. And the rest of you who are present in the audience, we appreciate your attendance, and we would encourage you to sign in the back to my left. At this time, the chair would entertain a motion to approve the agenda as submitted unless there are amendments.
So moved.
As submitted, Mr. Gearboss. Thank you. Is there a second?
I would like to move something off of the consent agenda.
Okay, we can do that now, or you can wait till we get to the consent agenda.
Okay,
it's your
that's
pleasure.
fine. No, go ahead, just do it now. We'll just do it.
You want to be the second for this motion?
I'll be the second on the, yes.
Okay. It's been properly moved by Councilmember Gearboss, seconded by Dillon to approve the agenda as submitted. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Ayes have it. The motion carries unanimously. There are no absences this evening, so we'll proceed to our one presentation of the evening, which is the Police Department Quarterly Report. And we would welcome Police Chief Rennick to the podium.
Well, good evening. Hopefully you have had a chance to take a look at the memo that I prepared. The first section, the policy and procedure, basically hasn't changed since the last quarter. We continue to do our daily training bulletins on a monthly basis. We are now through 6 months of daily training bulletins for this year. They're well received by the officers. It gets them talking in the squad room about policy and procedure, which is probably something you never hear happen in the police department. So certainly that is a good thing. As you can see, Lexipol is migrating from the current policy format to a new format, which will make it actually even easier for the officers and for myself when we issue updates to the policies. Our officers are going to be able to work faster and smarter, and hopefully things will just even get better with our Lexipol policies. Communication, we continue to have our roll calls 3 times a day. Copies of the weekly city staff meetings are continuing to be distributed to our all employees in the police department. And a practice of using an exit interview occurred this time because we had an officer who left and went to the city of Ann Arbor. So we had an exit interview with Christopher Hoffman, which hopefully will give us insight into why people are leaving the agency. And that's going to be a practice that the police department does from now on. Anytime an officer leaves, we will be interviewing them as to why. Department audit, we did do an audit of our speed measuring devices, and I can just tell you that that has been ongoing now for 4 to 5 months to get that done. Certificates weren't where they were supposed to be. We were able to finally get all of our certificates. We now have multiple copies of the certificates. They are on file with the clerk's department, the secretary, and the police department. Mike Snook has an extra copy of them, and I have a copy of them. So hopefully we will never have a lost certificate again. And all those are in place. And the last audit that we did was for the officer equipment. So all the equipment that the officers are issued when they start has been audited. There is some equipment that needs to be replaced every so often. As an example, bullet-resistant vests every 5 years. And so we now have an outline of when that stuff needs to happen, which certainly will make it so that those things get replaced in a timely manner. Our training, as you can see, daily training bulletins, once again, everybody does those every month. Sergeant Mag is in the School of Police Staff and Command. He's now halfway through. He also graduated from the Saline Leadership Institute, so he was actually going to both at the same time. The department conducted 2 firearms trainings during this quarter. We continue to use Police One as a training system for the police department for all the officers, the sergeant and myself. And then all dispatchers and every officer who acts as a dispatcher went through a 16-hour dispatcher training cultural diversity class, which is a requirement for dispatchers to attend 24 hours worth of training every 2 years. So they are all up to date, and all of our dispatchers are currently trained. So that certainly is a good thing. I attended a couple of webinars on traffic safety, first aid, Freedom of Information Act, and I also went to the summer conference for the Michigan Association of Chiefs of Police. Additionally, we worked the Memorial Parade. We certainly had a beautiful day this year. I don't think we could have asked for a better day. It went off without a hitch, which was great. And as you can see the numbers, the police department still continues to remain very active, over 17,000 activities during the quarter. Those are explained a little bit further in your memo. If you have any questions on those, certainly I'll be happy to answer those. And then, as I expressed in my annual report back in April, our criminal activity for major crimes has gone down for the last 3 years, 36%, and I'm just absolutely pleased to tell you in the first quarter of this year it's down another 15%. So we're doing something right, and I appreciate the work that the officers do. Our citizens are calling us when they see something suspicious, which certainly helps. And then I want to share one last thing, which isn't in your memo, and that's because it just happened this weekend. On 7/14, at about 6:59 at night, we received a call of an unresponsive male patient who was down, and the father was doing CPR. One of our officers responded, immediately recognized that it was a naloxone type incident, gave 2 doses of naloxone, and within 10 minutes, you can actually see it on the video, the man is up and talking. He would have died had the officer not done that. So certainly, a year and a half since we had this stuff on board, matter of fact, I'm getting a little bit of goosebumps just even thinking about it, that this man is walking as a result of that. So any questions that you have, I certainly would be happy to answer.
Amazing. Well, congratulate the officer for the job well done.
I will.
Are there questions for Chief Rennick? We'll start with Councilwoman Mitchell.
Thank you, sir. Regarding departure of Christopher Hoffman, was he a part-time or a full-time?
He was a full-time officer. He was here about a little over 2 years, and chose to go to the city of Ann Arbor for a bigger department.
Thank you.
Additional questions? Ms. Dillon?
I wanted to ask, I'll piggyback on that one. With your exit interview policy, who's conducting the exit interviews?
I did.
Just you? So
Just me.
that if it were somebody that had, say, an issue with your leadership, no offense?
Yep.
Would you have somebody else in place? I mean, is there a system where there could be a secondary person to do things, where it's one of a sergeant and you, and either you send, I guess, would be, I'm just wondering if that would be something to consider.
Well, yeah, certainly. Matter of fact, I began the conversation with, that you're in the best position to have a conversation because I can't discipline you at this point in time. You can say anything you want. And I did tell him that certainly if there is an issue that I did anything that he wanted to express to somebody else, he would certainly have that opportunity. He said there wasn't, and just briefly, the reason that he left, once again, he said the City of Ann Arbor was a much bigger department, has much more opportunities for lateral transfers like detective division, SWAT, those type of things. And he said that he would not have left here if the medical insurance had been in place for retirees.
Right.
And that was the only reason that he said that he left.
Okay. No, that's fine, and I wasn't trying to pinpoint that it was an issue with you directly. I'm just saying,
No.
should it be in
He
the future?
did, yes, he
that
did have
sometimes
that
having
opportunity, and
secondary-
he was given it.
And then my other question is, as far as the daily training bulletins, are all of the officers actually doing them? Are you checking to make sure they're being done? And if they're not being done, is there any recourse?
They are being done because it's recorded electronically.
Okay.
And so at the end of the month, I get a readout of the day that they did it and the day that they took the test and whether they passed or failed. And yes, it's mandatory to do it. And we did have one employee that did not do them, and it was taken care of.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Any additional questions for the chief?
I'm fine, thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Dillon.
Oh,
Didn't
no,
mean to cut
I'm
you off
sorry.
there.
No, I'm good.
Additional questions from the dais? No, well, Chief, we thank you for your time, and I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge your pending retirement. We congratulate you on that and applaud a 43
43 years.
43 years in
yes.
law enforcement. That's pretty extraordinary. So thank you for your service. We know it's not done here yet. We expect more out of you between now and when you depart, but I want to take this opportunity to congratulate you, and we look forward to celebrating that retirement with you in a few months.
Thank you, Mayor.
Okay. Okay, we move on now to citizen comments on agenda items. Under the Open Meetings Act, any citizen may come forward at this time and make comment or question on an item that appears on this agenda. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes per person. Anyone who would like to speak is requested but not required to state his or her name and address for the record.
Mary Hess, regarding the 17114 on Block Party. I was wondering if the council could possibly get together as far as preparing a special event permit, such as we have requested from the church, as far as just in general with questionnaires. The other thing is on Maple Oaks. I was wondering if in fact these are dedicated streets. If they are not, will the dump trucks, garbage trucks, be going on this area? And if in fact, since we take the water and sewer, if we have to have our DPW take their trucks on these streets, if they would be able to take that type of weight. The other concern is the cell tower. The cell tower has said that the Maple Oaks has said that somehow they're going to somehow address that if should, God forbid, this fall, it could fall in fact on this area of proposed development. And I think that I would like to have some kind of a surety that is addressed, or a surety bond. The other thing is the retention area. I think I got time. It appears that that the retention area might be 7 feet deep. Now, if it's a retention area or if it's a settling, is it going to drain eventually? Or will it be there for mosquitoes, green stuff? And I'd like to know, there was a thing as far as whatever a biotension area is. It's on the map, and it's BIORETENTION. And it's proposed for yard drain. And thank you very much for your kindness.
Thank you, Mrs. Hess. So there are additional citizen comments on agenda items, please.
I'm talking about the cemetery, and I guess that's an agenda item. And I know it's coming up. Actually, I was just thinking, I'm only the second time I've been here, giving a report. First time was about 7-10 years ago, and it was the same subject, the cemetery and its repair. The Oakwood Cemetery has a problem with how it looks and need a repair. And I did some survey work, because I know it's going to come up tonight, a discussion on it, about how other cemeteries take care of their cemeteries. And I visited Clinton, Tecumseh, and Lodi cemeteries. And all of them are in really good shape. You know, it makes, and some of them do active repairs on their cemeteries. Lodi does, and I have reports of a man who fixed the Lodi cemetery. And also Tecumseh. Tecumseh is a different, much different from Saline Cemetery. It has its own superintendent, its own repair department, has trucks and lawnmower equipment, and they take care of their own work. They also do repairs to their tombstones when they have time, you know, when they get better, they're finished with their regular work. So I'm just wondering, you know, how these cemeteries manage to do their, keeping up their cemeteries in such great shape, especially Tecumseh. And how Saline's is not that way. You know, how we have a different attitude towards how we can't do repair work or restoration on tombstones. And our cemetery, I'm sorry to say that, is the poorest kept cemetery I've seen, you know, in our area. You know, it's just, I can't, there's nothing, well, it needs some work somehow. So I'm hoping that the discussion period will reveal some new thoughts. So, okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lane. There are additional citizen comments on agenda items. Well, you're indeed correct. We will be talking about cemetery repairs under the discussion portion of our agenda. And Mrs. Hess, as it relates to some of your questions and concerns about Maple Cove, perhaps between staff, our planner, and Mr. Godfrey and his associates, you'll be able to address a number of those items. But we thank you for those comments. We proceed now to the consent agenda. The following consent agenda will normally be adopted without discussion. However, at the request of any citizen or council member, any item may be removed from the consent agenda for council discussion. Ms. Dillon, you had an item you'd like to remove?
I would like to remove C-17-114, which is the block party, for discussion.
So that will go under new business, and it will be in between 17-111 and 17-17. That item has been removed. Would you like to then move to approve the consent agenda as amended?
Yes, I will.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilwoman McClellan. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda as amended signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. We move on to the new business portion of our agenda, item 17-71. This is 2017 Saline Master Plan. This will be a motion to acknowledge receipt of the memo dated July 13th, 2017 from the Saline Planning Commission, and to approve and adopt or not to approve the 2017 Saline Master Plan.
I'll move to acknowledge and to approve and adopt.
Thank you, Councilmember Gearba. Is there a second? Seconded by Councilman Co. We actually have our planner here, Mr. Chris Atkins. Chris, we appreciate you being here. Would you like to begin tonight's discussion, or Mr. Rubel? Do you care to make any comment? All right, we'll turn it over to Chris.
All right, thank you. As all you're aware, this has been quite a long process. I believe close to 18 months, maybe a little bit more, for an update. We did diligently go through every chapter, every paragraph, every word, and make sure that all the information was concise. There's been numerous revisions done by many sets of eyes, and I'd like to thank, to start with, the Planning Commission for their support, and then also the subcommittee that we had that we were meeting on a about a monthly basis to go through these. So everything that's before you is as up to date as possible. And if anybody has any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer them.
Anyone have any questions for our planner?
I just have a
Ms.
quick,
McClellan,
on the
yes.
existing land use map, I think I brought this up before, maybe it didn't get all the way to the change, but the Union Admin Building is still listed under schools, and that's not a school building anymore.
Could you point me to what page you're on, or what map it is, I'm sorry, or what figure?
Upside down here.
Is it-
It's page 8, I guess. It's the existing land use map, so 8.
So parcel at
Just
the
colored
corner
as
of
blue.
McKay and North Ann Arbor,
Yeah.
That's, yeah.
designated as a school property. It's now Quantum Signal, Research and Development, private business.
I feel like there was one other thing that I had brought up when we had gone through one of the drafts that was similar to that, and I don't remember what it was.
That's a
but-
pretty innocuous change,
Yeah.
so unless there's objection from the dais,
It
we'll
is.
proceed to make that change without objection.
Yeah, that change does not change the intent. So
Okay.
that will not hold up any discussion or any recommendations that are
Okay.
made, not recommendations,
No.
excuse me, any votes that are made tonight.
Good catch, though. Additional questions or comments? Mr. Gearba?
Again, I'd like to thank Mr. Atkins and all his work, because the Planning Commission really relies on his ability to pull this together and pull some of the information that we needed, because we wanted to update as much as we could and make it current. But the other members of the subcommission, Catherine Scull and Bill Beardsley, were really dedicated to getting the information put forward. They were able to attend all the meetings. Me, not so much, but I tried. And the only other thing that I'd like to maybe address in here, not as address, but update, a number of the same pictures are in here, and unfortunately are of basically the same development uptown, and some of these are old. I'd like to see some newer pictures, because this will be a public document, that some of the items be replaced with, like, Cypress Ridge development and maybe South Ann Arbor Street and so forth, that we could have some more current pictures, because I'd like to show that we've actually developed things that are more current in the idea of what we're trying to put forward for planning.
I think that's a good suggestion, and knowing how many pictures Mr. Rubel takes, I think we can very easily accommodate that suggestion. I also want to acknowledge Mr. Gearbaugh said something that was actually somewhat misleading, with all due respect. The Planning Commission did do a great deal of work on this, but actually I think it was one of my better ideas was to form a subcommittee that he referenced that included himself, Catherine Skull, I think first Doug Lewan, and then Chris Adkins, as well as our chairman, Bill Beardsley, and they did much of the heavy lifting on this. They were really the front line for reviewing and making recommendations. So I would say probably 80% of the work was done by those four. So I do want to thank you for your service. It wasn't sexy and glamorous, and I'm sure it was tedious at times, but it is important work, and we appreciate your efforts. Is there any other discussion on this item? Ms. Tahar, please, and then Mr. Seal.
Yes, so first of all, I have not read every single word of this document, but congratulations to everyone, a really good job. It's very good. One little detail, figure 3, this is after page 23, still shows Houghton School. The use, it's shown as low-density residential usage, but it's right next to Mill Pond Park.
So corner of Bennett Street, Chris, and Mills, adjacent to Mill Pond Park.
Right.
Again, that change can be made without objection.
It's, and then I think I've said this before when we discussed an earlier version of this, or when we reviewed it. On page 14, the mention is made of the need to update the community gateways documents, goals, and it's suggested that that should be done. And I would like to say, as I've said before, I completely agree, and I hope that that would happen soon.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Seal, did you have a comment or question, sir?
Just a quick comment. A couple of the colored maps, like on page 63, at least in the document I have, they're printed upside down, the way the thing is put together. And if maybe somebody could go through and correct the orientation of those.
What you have now is, I don't want to say a draft, but the mayor has what the final copy is going to look like with the larger maps in them.
Oh, I see.
They'll all be,
Pulled out. All right, okay.
so it's just the way that it was oriented. But once everything's been adopted, signed off on, then everybody will get a copy of the final. It'll be bound in different paper stock.
Very good, thank you.
Additional questions? Any subsequent discussion on the motion moved by Gearbaugh? Mr. Gearbaugh.
Just one last statement. Some comments were brought up about non-motorized trails and some of that information, and we want to make sure that we brought that into this, and it's also part of the park master plan. So in both documents, we've covered that aspect, and so it's dealing with all the connectivity of everything in the park and additional attempts to try and make more walkable communities. So that was one of the, I think, items that was really highlighted at times, and this document helps address that.
Very good. Good, solid document. Again, appreciate the efforts made by everyone who's involved in its preparation. It's been properly moved by Gearbaugh, seconded by CO to acknowledge receipt and to approve and adopt. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. We move on to new business item 17-111. This is Rec Center Roof and Wall Replacement Bid Award. This is a motion to acknowledge receipt of the memo dated June 28, 2017 from Parks and Rec Director Scruggs, and to approve an award or not to approve the contract with CIE Michigan for base bid 1 in the amount of $1,173,750 and alternate number 2 in the amount of $49,600 for a total amount not to exceed $1,223,350.
I will move to acknowledge receipt of the memo.
Been moved by Gearbaugh to acknowledge receipt. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Councilwoman Dillon. We have Mr. Mays as well as Director Scruggs. We welcome you to the podium to make a presentation, and then we'll entertain any questions that council members have.
Just for the record, that's CEI,
What did I say?
CIE.
Excuse me. I have these verbal tics from time to time.
So I do have with me Mr. Mays, and I'll briefly kind of go through a few of the things, and then some more of the technical questions I'll let Mr. Mays address. June 8th, we had a pre-bid meeting where we had five different companies come out, roofing companies, to do a walkthrough, actual physical walkthrough of the facility, go up on the roof. Dan Lawrence was, who works for Mr. Mays, was there representing Mays Consulting, and went through the whole bid document, all of the components of what we were requesting, took questions, and again, did a physical walkthrough of the facility. June 22nd, and after that, there were 9 bid packets that were given out to other companies. Mays did some marketing of the project through some professional organizations that they have access to. June 22nd, official bid opening was held here at City Hall. We had 2 bids that we received. One of the bids was not a qualified bidder. They did not bid properly and provide the proper bid documents, so they were eliminated out of the bid process. And then the other bid was CEI Michigan, and they are a local company. They're out of Whitmore Lake. They provided all of the proper documentation that was required for the bid. Dan Lawrence took the information and contacted CEI, did some due diligence regarding some further questions, making sure that they were a qualified company to do the project. They came with very high recommendations from University of Michigan and some other local agencies that they've worked for. And the bid came in a little bit higher than what we anticipated. It was 4.1% higher than our estimate. So the base bid is $1,173,750, $1,173,750. That's a little bit higher than what we anticipated, however, still within the range that we expected. We also asked for a couple of different alternates. One alternate was to provide a 90 mil EPDM, which is that rubber roofing membrane, with 6-inch wide seams, and then also an alternate 2, which was the same, plus a 30-year warranty. And the alternate bids actually came in lower than what we had expected. So with that in mind, we are recommending that we go with alternate 2, which provides a 30-year warranty and a thicker EPDM on the roof. With all that being said, we also had bid number 2, which was the painting, the interior painting of the natatorium area. And CEI of Michigan did not bid on that portion. Clark Brothers, which was the other bidder, did bid on that, but the bid was well above what our estimate was. And again, they did not provide the proper bid bonds, bid documentation in order to bid. So we have rejected, or we'd like to reject that bid and then wait probably till the spring in order to bid out that painting. This doesn't affect the roofing at all. The painting is programmed for September 2018 anyway. So we have time to actually formally bid that out separately, maybe at a different time where we have other companies that can bid on that. So what we're interested in tonight is to approve the bid from CEI Michigan with the alternate number 2 in the amount of $1,173,750 plus $49,600, and not to exceed $1,223,350.
So you
know
got
what I mean.
verbal mix too?
I do. I'm sorry, but those are big numbers, and I'm not used to that. So that's what our request is tonight. Mr. Mays has some other information that he could share with you, and maybe both of us could answer some questions.
Please, we'd be delighted. Thank you for being with us, Mr. Mays.
Thank you. To give you a little more
information here. We actually had the 9 contractors take the plans, but of the 9 contractors, we only received the one legitimate bid, or one good bid. We followed up with contractors, and what was happening, it's the market conditions now. They have so much work out there. A lot of them are doing automobile manufacturing facilities. They're involved in that. They're involved in several different kinds of new construction projects. They just don't have time to do this. Just the market conditions are different. Every time you take a project out to bid, you really never really understand exactly how the market conditions are going to be. In this case, I was thinking that because of the school projects will be finishing up, that there'd be a lot of contractors available, but they've already bid work. So, I mean, that's the reason that we have one real good contractor, and we did do our diligence, and we've really looked into them, and they've done real good work for a lot of different companies and also the University of Michigan. And I think in addition to that, I looked at their workload. They do a little over $20 million a year. They're right now at $12 million, so they have the ability to do this work. So, that's another function of what I always take a look at and make sure they have the capabilities. So I would recommend that the CEI come on board. Then in addition to that, I followed up with Carlisle, and because that was the original manufacturer, and the CEI came out with a letter. I just received the letter today. I can give you copies if you'd like now, but they have stated that this came from Rob Cook from CEI, the president or vice president of CEI. He stated that after contacting and reviewing with Carlisle, I can offer a material credit of $6,500 to be deducted from our bid number to install their system. So we do have another $6,500 that Carlisle is donating back to the project. And then in addition to that, we wanted to follow up because there was a last-minute change on the color for the metal panels. Originally, we had the metal panel color of colonial red, and now it's switched to a deep blue sea color, and there's no additional cost for that. It's all the same.
Mr. Mays, do you want to maybe hand that memoranda to Councilwoman Mitchell? She can review it and then pass it on down the dais. Sorry to interrupt you.
That's fine. I had extra copies to pass that out.
Do you have any additional comments, sir?
No, I think that covers pretty much what we need to cover.
I don't mean to be redundant here, but I just want to be crystal clear on one thing, and you've basically addressed this in your prepared remarks. First of all, I'm always a little troubled when we just receive one qualified bid, but it's happened before. I'm sure it will happen in the future. But Mr. Mays, you have a pretty sterling reputation. We've established that in the past. Talking about a significant investment of financial resources on an important project. You feel pretty confident that CIE will do a good job for us?
Yeah, CEI.
I'm telling you about these
They'll do a good job.
Verbal tics. You know?
Yeah, they have a very good, stellar reputation too. And again, the University of Michigan recommends them very highly, along with many other people that we contacted. So I don't see any reason that they couldn't do a very good job for you on this project. So.
Okay, very good. Questions from the dais. Mr. Gearbaugh, did you have some?
Yeah, just a couple. When you mentioned about the warranty, what is the length of the warranty?
So what we're going with, the alternate warranty would be a 30. We had a 20-year warranty to start with, and then the alternate brought it up to a 30-year warranty. So we have a full system warranty. Originally, when the original roof was put on, it was lacking vapor retarder and all the products that we needed to have a good warranty, because the Carlisle was the manufacturer, but they supplied the membrane for the top. There was nothing supplied below that, and now we have Carlisle products all the way up, so now we have a good warranty that's got some teeth in it for 30 years.
Okay. And is that going to be prorated over 30 years, or is it?
It's not really, it's prorated, it's a full system warranty that we have in there.
So 25 years from now it fails?
If any materials or anything fails, they're responsible for materials and labor.
Okay, great. I'm hoping that we can not have to use that. The only other one question I had was in terms of, I noticed in the references in here, CEI, right, is working on the school project currently?
Working on it.
On the high school or one of the school buildings
They
out there?
may be working on that.
Is there a subcontractor of Clark Brothers?
Dan was, let me look back here. I may be able to find it for you. It may take me a little while, but they could be working on another project here. I mean, I didn't follow up on all their.
Yeah, I just happened to be looking through and it said they're on the September 17th, Saline Area Schools, Clark Construction is the oversight company, but I thought I saw CEI in here somewhere else, so.
So also Clark Construction is different from the one.
From
that-
Clark Brothers? Okay, I want to just clarify that. Okay, thank you.
Additional questions? Ms. Dillon?
Do we have a dollar amount as to the 4.1%? Do we know what that translates to a dollar amount?
Not right off the top of my head. I have to get my calculator out.
Okay, because I'd like to know that number. And then, had we initially asked, I guess when we get into alternate 1 and alternate 2, it's talking about moving to a 90 mil versus the 60 mil. Were we happy with 60 mil originally, and now we're upgrading?
Well, 60 mil is a decent product. I mean, it's a good 20-year roof. But we wanted to find out what the cost would be to go with a 90 mil product, because we know that would gain, at least another 10 years, for the roof system, as far as the longevity of the roof, at least another 10. But we also wanted to find out what the cost would be to have a warranty in addition to the thicker membrane. So when you go for the warranty, they actually give you some more. You have to add more materials into the system. They have some other requirements that, in this case, Carlisle or whichever manufacturer would want to add in, and that includes whatever else that they would require for their full warranty, for their full 30-year warranty.
Okay, so then what is the life expectancy of the roof if they're giving a 30-year warranty on it?
Well, as far as for a 30-year warranty, they're warranting it for 30 years, but the life expectancy should be much greater than that. I mean, I would, for a 90 mil product, I would say you're in 45, 50 years. I mean, I have not seen a 90 mil product out there. I mean, that's in the last several years that they brought the 90 mil to the market. So I can't guarantee you exactly, but we know we have 30 years plus. You're going with from a 60 mil to a 90 mil product, and so you've got a lot more weathering surface as far as to be able to get down even to the 60. I mean, you get additional 30 mils of product on top. So I don't foresee a failure in that roof, and way beyond my lifetime.
So then, just to clarify, the 30-year warranty covers the entire roof, all aspects of it? Because I think we've had that issue before where, well, this warranty doesn't matter because this part, a different part had failed, causing the warranty part to fail.
You're correct on that. Now we have vapor retarder material that goes all the way down to the deck, or we have a gypsum board and a vapor retarder. And then the insulation materials, and then after the insulation materials, then you have your membrane materials. But all the adhesives, everything that goes together is all from one supplier. It's a full system warranty, so it covers all their product. So we have the full 30-year warranty in place now, or will have after the construction. So that's the best you're going to get in the industry right now.
Okay, and if in a year and a half they go belly up, is this warranty going to have any kind of recourse to survive the company?
This is Carlisle. I think they're somewhere around a $4 billion company. They're several billion anyway, and they've been in business for many, many years. I mean, clear back, I don't know the exact time, probably in the 50s or so.
Okay.
I know they've had rubber roofing since in the 60s. They have a good product and good line behind them.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Additional questions regarding the motion to acknowledge receipt. First, Councilwoman McClellan, and then Councilwoman Mitchell.
Just to tag on to that, to Janet's question, the warranty does not cover the construction aspect, but we were going to have someone overseeing to make sure that the construction process was being watched so that it's not going to void a warranty if some construction worker does something wrong along the way.
The intention is to have someone on site all the time. It's not just for the roof, it's a building envelope, so it's the walls, all the new metal panels. So we're going to be watching everything all the way through.
Okay, because that was my question, just to make sure that we're not voiding a warranty by some kind of installation mishap somewhere along the way.
No, we're going to keep a real close eye on it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Ms. Mitchell?
Thank you, Mr. Mays and Ms. Struggs. I was looking at the CEI, the contractor's qualification statement, and on page 3 of their statement, they're asked to self-disclose if they have any, failed to complete any work, any judgments or claims. Is part of your job to independently verify that statement?
We've done what we can. We typically do call, all their references.
Okay.
As far as that, yes, that's part of what we do.
Okay, all right, I appreciate, just checking. And my last question is, I believe one of the things that got us into the particular wreck suit roof pickle before was that the company hadn't done this type of construction before. So has CEI done this type of construction before?
Well, best of my knowledge that they have. CEI has done all types of roof systems, and so that they would have done this particular type too. Dan Lawrence would have followed up from my office. I didn't personally get involved with that, and so
Sure.
the schedule's all changed, or he would have been here. So.
Sure. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Additional questions? Mayor Pro Tem Tahar?
No, well, this is in response to Ms. Dillon's question earlier about the 4% difference. Assuming that the numbers on your memo, Mr. Mays, to Mr. Campbell about the project, the 4% difference in my head, arithmetic, is $46,750, and then also the difference between the expected cost of alternate 2 and the actual cost is $28,900. So I think the bottom line difference is $17,850 more than we originally thought, or in that ballpark. So I just whispered that to Ms. Dillon, so I thought I should share it with everyone.
You're probably pretty correct on that. We had, the original estimate was $1,127,000 for the base bid 1.
Right, and the actual bid is $1,173,000. Right.
Yeah. Yep.
So,
Yes.
anyway, just to share with everyone what I just whispered.
Additional questions? Mr. Gearbox?
Just one last one. When will construction start and the likely period of construction time, I guess?
Okay, well, I think as soon as we get approval to move forward, we're going to push to get this moving. We need to go through the submittals and get it, we have to get a contract issued. I would hope it'd be, fairly soon, but typically the submittal process, once we have a contract, you're probably looking at about a 3-week turnaround, but we're going to push as much as we can to make this happen.
Very good.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Dillon?
This is for Ms. Scruggs. So this work will not impact the rec center facility itself. It will remain open and fully functional.
Correct. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, that's correct.
If there's nothing further, we're going to vote then on Mr. Gearbaugh's motion that was seconded by Councilwoman Dillon to acknowledge receipt of the memo dated June 28th, 2017 from Parks and Rec Director Scruggs. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries. The receipt is acknowledged. Now the chair would entertain a motion. You're going to trip me up again.
The base bid and the alternate number 2.
So you didn't even make me say it. CEI. There we go. Okay. Thank you, Mr. CO. Is there a second to his motion?
Second.
Seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Tahar. Is there any discussion from the dais? Then we'll proceed to vote. Oh, I'm sorry. Who did I miss? Mr. Smith?
Mayor, it might be good to point out that the bids on the bonds were at 2.43%, a really good price on the bonds by Chase Bank. And if you'll recall, the bond closing may occur just a few days after construction starts, but we built into this, and that's why we delayed till tonight the award of the bid, so that there's 30 days. We could, if we can't close on the bonds for some reason, can't imagine what that might be, but if we didn't close on the bonds, we could halt construction and have very little consequences of that.
That is excellent news about the bonds, and I've asked Mr. Campbell to communicate the specifics of that in his upcoming weekly communique, because that's pertinent and important information for council members to have when we get questioned on this project. If there's nothing further, then we'll proceed to vote. It's been properly moved by Seal, seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Tahar to approve and to award. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. We now move on to the one action item from the consent agenda that was added to new business. This will be a motion to approve the request for a block party by Jason Nillis, I hope I pronounced that correctly, to approve the closure of West McKay on July 22nd, 2017 from 2 p.m. to 6 p.m., with organizers being responsible for the placing and removing of barricades for the event.
Move to approve.
Thank you, Mr. Gearbaugh. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ms. McClellan. If Mr. Gearbaugh or Councilwoman McClellan have no questions, I'll turn it over to Ms. Dillon, who asked that this item be placed on new business. The floor is yours.
Oh, thank you. My question is just, Mr. Campo, I would like you to reiterate what the city's policy is as to alcohol consumption in the streets when the road is closed.
It's not allowed.
Do we convey that to people when they apply, that there is no alcohol allowed? Okay. I just want to make sure that it's been clarified to people that just because the road is closed, it does not open up the window to public drinking.
And I would add to that, if individuals notice drinking in a public street, the police department and our police personnel are prepared to enforce that.
Okay.
I have a question as well.
Oh, I'm sorry, please.
Mr. Campbell, is that statement on this petition?
Which
No.
statement?
The statement about clarifying that alcohol consumption is not allowed on the street, even though the street is blocked off?
I would defer that question to Clerk Royal.
It's not on this particular one, but we are updating that form, so it will be on the new one that I'm bringing to council at the next meeting. But we do let them know at the time that they submit it that there is, that they can't put a tent in the street and that there's no drinking. And we cover a variety of other items with them too.
Thank you.
Additional questions or comments? Mr. Gearbaugh.
Just real quick, I know that the idea is that we want to encourage this to be done, community block parties and so forth, but because of a lot of the recent, I would say, alcoholic incidences where we've had people killed, is there a potential requirement for us to have them show proof of some type of insurance that we may need to be doing that? We do that to all of our event requirements for everything else, and I know it's a discouragement because it's going to cost, but just that question I'm throwing out, and maybe if we have to look at legally, whether that would cover us. Otherwise, we're going to get hit anyways, I know that.
Well, we're prohibiting anybody drinking alcohol or distributing alcohol on city property, on city streets. And beyond that, the homeowners who live along that street will be covered under their homeowners policy. So it's no different than if they were just walking down the street and not blocking off the street and serving alcohol on their own premises.
Okay, thank you. That helped.
Additional comments or questions? No, then we'll proceed to vote. It's been properly moved by Gearbaugh, seconded by McClellan, was that right, or was it Mitchell? McClellan, excuse me, to approve. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. We move on to new business item 17-117. This is 2017 paving projects. This will be a motion to acknowledge receipt of the memo dated July 13, 2017 from City Superintendent Engineer Rubel, and to approve an award or not to approve the PE Professional Service Agreement to Midwest Consulting LLC in a not to exceed amount of $15,443.52.
Move to acknowledge and to approve an award.
Thank you, Mr. Gearbaugh. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilwoman Dillon. Mr. Rubel, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A lot of things seem to just naturally fall into place in the last 30 days in order for us to come up with this composite package of miscellaneous paving projects. And so it works out better for all situations here on the funding of all these projects and getting them all done yet this year. We've already initiated fast track on this. We've already have services in line for soil borings. We could actually do those this week. We could write specifications very quick. As I mentioned in here, we can log at least 4 of these projects from existing data. So we can quickly put together a bid package, and the goal then is to accomplish these projects yet this year while we still have some good weather. By combining the 6 projects into one, you have an economy of scale to get lower unit prices. You save on overhead, in administration, testing, and all those things involved with managing the project. So we would be able to deliver the project, and then of course everything would be treated the same. You get the same quality of services, same contractor, same responsibility to that contractor to take care of all punch list items and so forth. So it's basically a win-win-win across the board for all parties involved.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Rule. Appreciate your work on this. Are there questions for our superintendent engineer? Ms. Mitchell, and then we'll get to Ms. Dillon.
Thank you, Mr. Rubel. I'm looking at, the pages aren't numbered, but it's not the front page. It's the second page that I open up. At the top, it says Colony Court, entire length. I'm looking at that page. I was a little confused by the term driveways. And is that talking about private driveways, or is it roadways? Can you
No,
clarify?
on all street projects, such as we did in US 12 last year, if you happen to, if the project limits happen to go into just the approach, see, between the sidewalk and the curb is the driveway approach, which is on city property. So if for some reason we had to replace the curb there and a part of the driveway is involved, we try to just repair maybe a couple feet of it. So there's very little concrete repair involved with that.
So, for the purposes of this agreement, do we need to have the word approach be clarified?
Well, not in this agreement. This is just scope of services for our consultant engineer to draft the documents. Certainly, when you draft the bid documents, which grow out of the field work performed by the MCI and myself, yeah, the pay items do adequately and define that we don't go on private property. We only do what's in the city right away.
Right, I was confused by that wording, and I didn't know how that affected the process, so I appreciate you paying attention to that.
That's it, Ms. Councilwoman? Thank you, ma'am. Ms. Dillon?
Oakwood Cemetery, are they going to do everything at once? Are they going to do it in phases?
No, we would do all the driveways in one phase. We know the exact quantities involved. We know the lengths, widths, square yards, and they basically all need the same treatment because they all are the same basic cross-section, same subsoils. And so you have economy of scale. The intent here is to get all these completed this year.
So you're referring to all the roadways that lead to the grave sites, correct?
Right, all the little, they vary from 11 to 12 feet wide.
Right.
Correct.
And so what happens if there's a funeral in the midst of doing this project?
Well, that's built into the contract agreement, just like we do other projects out there. Even the soil boring crew was put on notice today that if they have to do soil borings there Thursday and Friday, first thing they do is call DPW. If there's a graveside service, they suspend it, come back the next day.
Okay. And then, just for clarification on the Salt Spring Park, it just says coordination with Beckett and Rader for the purposes integrating their plans into the overall bid package. Can you just explain that a little bit, just to clarify?
Right. Beckett and Rader was engaged by contract, and they completed 2 parts. It was 2 parts. One, do the general plan, okay, and that was all accomplished and adopted by the Parks Commission, I believe, in June. And then part 2 was to do the design of phase 1 because we had budgeted money for phase 1, which is the front parking lot. It's 13 spaces in front of the wastewater plant. off the driveway.
Right.
And then part of that would be the very attractive river walk. You know, it'd be actually one of our first nice river walks. But that would go from Monroe Street to the entrance of Salt Springs Park. And that river walk is also in with the parking lot. And so this project would be to take the Beckett and Rader plans and put them into this bid document to get it bid out. And then they also would benefit from, we would build this at the same economy of scale combined with all the paving items of all the other projects.
Okay, so the Reader's Digest version that I was looking for is what is the work scope that was being done, which you've just told me in that last bit. It would have been nice to have that in this document as to what was being done versus just a generic statement.
I guess I missed the dialogue on that.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
No, that's okay. What I meant is it would just, so that we knew what the scope was.
Yeah, I just put down parking lot and river
Right.
walk, but
Okay, thank you very much.
you're
Thank you,
welcome.
Councilwoman. Additional questions? Mr. Gearba?
Actually, Linda had one before.
Oh, Linda first,
yes.
okay. Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you. Well, so it's about the money. So I'm assuming that there's different funding sources
Right.
for these projects. The cemetery would be from
Right.
the perpetual care fund, some would be general
Right.
fund, TIFA funds.
Correct.
Correct.
Right.
Okay.
Yep, there's some of each because of their nature of their classification and their location.
And the money is all there.
Correct. We did, Jeff actually was very, very good. He helped me in June and got with Joanne and checked on the major street funds. And like cemetery fund, is perpetual care fund, and that was all put together and asked for by the cemetery task force.
Great.
And they've been on this for a couple of years, by the way. And the parking lot project is a TIFA fund. And, let's see, Salt Springs Park, of course, was budgeted in general fund. And the Torwood sidewalk, Jeff has funds set in his water and sewer fund, or a sidewalk and storm sewer fund.
Okay.
Excuse me.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Tarr. Mr. Gearba?
Yeah, it was just interesting when I saw and thank you for putting this in here for parking lot number 4, but it talks about the utility structure repairs and the addition of an under drain in the location of a likely spring. What's an under drain? I just didn't understand how that works with that potential spring that's going to be in that parking lot. I didn't realize there was that uptown in that area. It's the city parking lot number 4. It says something about a potential under drain for a likely spring.
I'm sorry, which paragraph and which page, Mr. Gearba?
Page 204.
Okay.
In the middle, it says city parking lot number 4, west of South Ann Arbor Street. Bullet number 2, miscellaneous utility structure repairs and addition of under
Okay.
drain
Yep.
in location of likely spring. I don't understand exactly how that works.
You're right there. I don't know of any spring up there, but apparently our engineers think there is. But the under drain is just a under drain that we put under curbs. It's only about 2 feet deep, subsurface drainage to keep water from coming up, freezing underneath the pavement, causing frost heave and cracking. So all it does is relieve the accumulation of water below the grade of the asphalt, so it preserves the asphalt. I'm not sure where they got the spring idea from, because I'm not, like you say, I'm not aware of any springs.
Yeah, the only one I know where
whatsoever.
that's had occurred is on Harris Street at the old
Yeah.
Hoover-Bearing
Yeah.
parking lot out there. I know they had one there, but maybe that would be something just to follow up to,
Yeah.
for us on council to understand if there really is a spring up there or something.
Sorry
else.
about that. Scott, when he does his research, he throws a lot in there.
I mean, I've seen a lot of water up there at times. I just didn't know maybe there was a
Can we
problem.
get clarification on that and you message on it in your weekly communique? Yep. Okay, very good.
Thank you.
Yep. Additional questions? Subsequent discussion? Then we'll proceed to vote. It's been properly moved by Gearboss, seconded by Dillon, to acknowledge receipt and to approve an award. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. We move on to new business items. You better not go too far, Mr. Rubel. I say that respectfully, of course, because you've got another item up next, which is 17-60. This is Maple Oaks final PUD. This is a motion to acknowledge receipt of the memo dated July 13th, 2017 from the Saline Planning Commission, the July 5th, 2017 memo from Chris Atkins of Carlisle Wortman, and the July 6th, 2017 memo from Superintendent Engineer Rubel to approve or not to approve the final PUD for Maple Oaks with conditions listed on the memo dated July 13th from the Saline Planning Commission.
Move to acknowledge and to approve.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem
Second.
Targ. Was that by McClellan?
Yep.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Rubel, do you want to begin by making a comment? Mr. Atkins, you worked quite a bit on this as well. You wanna kick it off for us?
Sure. I'll let Gary sit for a little bit. Yes, there was a lot of work, not only by myself, but by a lot of folks on this, particularly the Planning Commission and Gary and the applicants as well. I went back through my notes, and I think this started in October of 2016, so this has been going on for about 9 months. Just kind of give you a 10,000-foot view, this is probably one of the most difficult PUDs I've ever worked on. Difficult in the sense 8 acres and the multiple classifications of residential use you're putting in, being able to achieve the proper detention, the walkability, the walking paths, the bioretention swales, and then to have it, again, all in one small area. Generally, PUDs are 20 acres would be considered small. So to squeeze all this in 1 acre or in 8 acres is pretty spectacular. And the type of use that it's going to be, and for the residents that it's going to be for, is pretty outstanding as well. So, as you recall, back in April, the preliminary came in front of the City Council, which was approved, and a number of deviations. And I believe most of you were at the joint meeting that we had that Doug Luan put on back in March, I believe. So the deviations, they have to abide by, in this case, the specific residential zoning districts, but they're allowed to deviate from certain aspects. It could be height, it could be setback, it could be, well, basically those are two ones, lot width. And they did ask for, I believe there was probably 15, 16 of them, of which during the preliminary they were all approved. So this allows for the additional open space. 42% of the area is going to be open space. So I'll fast forward to where we ended up last week. They came before us for final site plan PUD approval on Wednesday, and it was also approved unanimously with some conditions which will also address questions that were asked during the public comment section. On the last page, recommendations that we made, those 3 have been provided and accomplished by the applicant. They brought in some documentation the night of the meeting on the 12th, and so this hasn't been updated for you, but item number 2, the maintenance and preservation of the natural open space, that will be provided in the master deed, which is currently in draft form. And
I'm sorry, point of information, please.
Please.
Can you describe where you are?
oh, I'm
in your
sorry.
packet, please?
In the write-up that we did, it would be page 9. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
I'm only used to working with one packet, so I forgot that you have a couple hundred pages in front of you. So those first 3 items have been taken care of, and then the next 5 items, most of those can be answered by Gary and the applicant. I would like to address the cell tower, that the agreement with the cell tower company is currently underway as well, and they provide us with the language, actually the page that had the language in there stating that the cell tower company would install a mechanism to control the fall if that indeed does happen. So if you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer them the best I can.
Before we get to questions for Mr. Atkins, Mr. Rubel, do you have any additional comments you'd like to share at this time? You don't have to, but if there's something on your mind, we'd be delighted to hear.
As Mr. Atkins stated, together with the 3 reports that were put in there, those are the reports presented to the Planning Commission. They wrapped those into conditions. We did explain to the Planning Commission at that meeting that Generally, all those items that are of any significance whatsoever are drawn into into the condominium development agreement. Now, so this isn't the last time that the city council will see this item. You saw the preliminary PUD. Now you're seeing the final PUD as a follow-up, just to wrap it up. But the next step would be drafting of the development agreement, which is already under review and in stages of draft by our attorney, Nick Curcio, who also drafted up the recent Huntington Woods agreement. But we will review that, make sure all the significant items are within that development agreement. That development agreement will come back to City Council, and then you'll see specific details, provisions, standards, and all those things that will direct the construction phase, which is, of course, the most important product here.
Questions for our consultant or for Mr. Rubel? Mr. Gearbaum.
Could you define what a bioretention is and what it performs?
No, I cannot. Gary could probably do that better than I can, or the
Or
applicant.
someone?
Actually, Jeff is an expert here. It's a bioswale. It's one of our, each project, see, we're a stormwater phase 2 community. We have been for about 8-9 years, I think. And our policy, is City of Saline policy, as far as phase 2 community, is that we, projects each have to have 2 BMPs, better management practice facilities. And so in this case, they are installing these bioswales, which basically is something green that filters water. It helps water quality before then it goes into the detention pond. So it's like a sort of a pre-treatment nature's way.
Something similar to what the schools did in their parking lot, those rain gardens or whatever they're called?
Yeah. There's rain gardens is one type of bioswale. The architect, he could tell you what their specific design is as far as plantings.
But the idea is that it's a first step for water.
Right. It's one of our it's a water quality measure, not just storage, because, you know, the DEQ, the EPA, and then down to DEQ, down to us, not only the quality and of the water as it gets into the right discharge area, but the temperature of the water is important too. They want to lower the temperature of the water, not have warm water go into the estuaries. It's bad for the fish.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Rubel or for our consultant? All three down here. I think I'm going to work my way towards me because that's the order I saw the hands go up. So C.O. Dillon Tar.
Yes, sir, Mr. Atkins, do you know what kind of, that's a monopole design in that cell tower, isn't that? What kind of a structure do they put in place to direct the fall if it should occur? Do you know?
I believe they're going to install something in the center of it, if I'm not mistaken. Again, this is anything
we haven't
engineered
seen
related. It's out of
the
my
end
purview.
result of that report, but apparently there's a clause in an upcoming agreement we haven't seen yet that deals with the fall concern.
Bruce Michael with the applicant. Just real briefly to answer that question, as I understand, there's a form of plates that are put in the middle of that tower that basically cause it to collapse. Instead of completely over like this, to collapse in the middle on itself instead of a long fall.
And it says to the southwest, so it would try and follow the roadway there, is that correct?
Well, I think, and I'll talk loudly so everybody can hear me, the big concern is not that it falls this way or this way. The concern is if it falls this way. So the idea is that we want to make sure that whatever system that they provide, and they're the experts, they're the guys that own these things, so we're going off of their design. But it gives us the right to demand that it get done, so we can protect our customers.
I guess I'm just questioning the wording that I read in the document you referred to that said in what number 1, you said the first 3 were already addressed. Number 1 of the remaining 2, documentation of the cell tower indicating installation of an additional mechanism to prevent or redirect the tower's collapse to the southwest. Does that mean to prevent the collapse to the southwest or to redirect it?
To prevent it.
Okay.
Anything else, Mr. Seal?
Okay. Very good. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dillon.
My question is actually for Mr. Campbell, and I just wanted to follow up on the cell tower issue of is that been finalized?
It is not. We continue to work. I know Mr. Godfrey, the applicant, as well. I mean, they have said that the language is, they signed off on the language some time ago, and we are simply waiting. I say simply, because that's a relative word, but we are waiting for them to approve that, so we can move forward to the final phase.
I think it's been approved.
Oh, it has, okay.
We're just waiting for their signatures on it and for them to send the signed copy to us, and we've been promised that it's in the mail. So
that's a step forward. They haven't promised it's in the mail. They've said it's forthcoming.
Well, I don't know. We've been promised that it's coming, but I say facetiously it's in the mail. We expect that. They won't be granted any permits to construct until we have that in hand.
Correct.
And we can't put any more pressure on them to speed up the process?
We've tried every which way, and continue to try, and so is the developer.
Okay.
So Bill Godfrey's been emailing them every few days, and keeps getting more promises. It's coming, it's coming, it's coming.
That's right.
And I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, Bill.
No, but we'll touch base again tomorrow.
Thank you.
Mr. Hart?
Well, along that same line, how optimistic are we that the documentation and the actual addition of the mechanisms about tower collapsibility will be handled by them in a timely manner? Okay.
Well, the documentation we should get, since they get paid for doing the work on the tower, we're assuming that they would do that fairly expeditiously, so.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Godfrey, would you or any of your associates like to come forward to the podium this time and make any comments, excuse me, that you deem appropriate about the project and how things are progressing?
Yes, Bruce will go ahead. You go first, Bruce.
Just thank you all for being a pleasant community to work with, which we don't necessarily get everywhere we go. And basically, a couple of questions that were asked by one of the members of the audience. The roads are being built to municipal standards, reviewed by your city engineer. And the construction technique that we'll use on the roads is that we'll put down the base course of asphalt, not the final course of asphalt, until construction's complete. Then when construction's complete, then we can clean up all the issues that might have happened due to construction vehicles and provide a nice smooth wearing surface. With regard to the storm detention basin, the basin at a 100-year flood would become 6 feet deep, but that drains down in approximately a day. The bottom of the basin is structured as a wet bottom basin with the appropriate wetland plantings and seed mix that's put into that basin, so it's intended to be wet all the time, that it would be a permanent water-bearing pond. Those are really primarily the only comments I have, other than answering any questions you all might have. Bill, I think, can update us on where we're at with sales and all.
Bill?
I just want to say thanks again and reiterate my comments to the Planning Commission on how much we appreciate your time and effort on this first PUD project. And also city staff, especially City Manager Campbell and City Superintendent Rubel, for guiding us through the process, because it was very complicated. And, we needed help, and we got it, and we appreciate that. Thank you. Things were done as timely as they could be. I know it seems like we've been waiting a long time for this night, but I think everybody who worked on this project put in 100% and gave it the attention that the project deserves. And we're very excited right now because we have sold out almost all of phase one. We've sold all, we have 10 reservations for the single family homes, We have 4 reservations for all the condominiums in Phase 1, and we have 2 reservations for the townhouses, and there are some in the pipeline. So I think that we will just go right into Phase 2. Our biggest issue now is building things on a timely basis so that our customers can get into their new homes, because they're very excited about the location and being part of the community. And some of the people are coming from Saline, but there are some new families coming into Saline, empty nesters who are downsizing to be near their grandkids who live in Saline. We've got certainly have families with special needs, children and adult children in the community. We've got young couples who want to be near the middle school and have young middle schoolers. So it's turned out to be a great mix of people so far, and it's been a real pleasure. And I want to say thanks again to everybody here. If you have any questions for me, I'd be happy to answer them. Otherwise,
Any questions for the applicant? Mr. Seal?
Real quick, you say these roads are built to city standards. Will these be dedicated, or will this be dedicated as a public street?
Yes.
Thank you.
Additional questions for the applicant? Well, let me just say, Mr. Godfrey, and I believe I articulated this at our most recent Planning Commission. One, we appreciate your patience and your team's patience as we work through the implementation of our first PUD. And as our planner, Mr. Adkins, stated, and this is not meant to be disrespectful, this was a very complex proposal. And so it required us to be very thoughtful and very strategic in our thinking. And I think the process that was developed by the Planning Commission and the Planning Commission Chair, Mr. Beardsley specifically, was about as close to perfect as I think it could get. But, you know, more importantly than that, we're really pleased that you have cleared another hurdle, or you're about to clear another hurdle, assuming this motion passes, because this is a really important project. It's unique and it meets the needs of a demographic in our community. As I've stated to you on numerous occasions, that's often overlooked and forgotten, and that's wrong. And I actually think that this is going to be a model for other communities and other developers. I think it's really cutting edge and really special, and we're just glad that you keep plugging away.
We hope so too. Thank you.
Great. If there's nothing further, Mr. Gearbaugh.
Just one last one. I just want to appreciate Mr. Smith's work on this, because I think we've been working on this for almost 3 years, actually, from the perspective of selling the property and working out the sales agreements and the assessment and everything that we did to coordinate this property for you to work on, and appreciate all the time that you've taken on it. So without your help, I think this would not be as successful as I think it's going to turn out to be. So thank you to everyone that's worked on this project.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Smith.
Excellent. All right. Well, if there's nothing further, then we have a motion on the floor, moved by Tahar, seconded by McClellan, to acknowledge and to approve. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. The motion carries unanimously. Bill, thank you very much. Appreciate your time. We move on to new business item 17-119. This is sidewalk bid. This is a motion to acknowledge receipt of the memo dated July the 12th, 2017 from DPW Director Fordyce, and to approve an award or not to approve the 2017 sidewalk program construction engineering planning inspection and management project from Stantec Inc. with a base project fee of $14,205 and an ADA ramp fee of $300 per ramp. Is there a motion?
I'll move to acknowledge receipt of the memo.
Moved by Gearbaugh to acknowledge receipt. Is there a second?
Second.
Oh, boy. Let's do Mitchell on that one. Mr. Fordyce, the floor is yours.
Thank you. This is a proposal to award contract.
Jeff, excuse me, that microphone is not on.
There we go. This is a proposal to award a contract to Stantec Inc., the local office of a national consulting engineering firm, for construction engineering services for the first year of Phase 2 of the sidewalk program. You recall Phase 1 involved the surveying of sidewalks citywide and the cutting program that eliminated a great number of the trip hazards on the sidewalk system. This phase begins with the sidewalks that couldn't be fixed by that technique. So these are ones that are cracked, spalled, tipped, for various reasons need to be replaced. So I put together an RFP to get proposals from engineering firms to provide these services.
Received 5 of those on June 23rd. I evaluated those and found Stantec, actually there were a number of excellent proposals in there. Usually when we go out for proposals, there's 1 or 2 that kind of stand out, but these were all really, really good proposals. But Stantec had a great work plan in their proposal and the overall best and lowest cost proposal. So recommending award to that. Their scope of work is detailed in the RFP on page 3 and 4 of the RFP. It's split into 4 phases. A planning phase in which we'll review the existing survey data and narrow in on one particular geographic area. Then we have to inspect those sidewalks to differentiate between private responsibility repairs and city responsibility repairs, and then do cost estimates for all of the private responsibility repairs, and then distribute the sidewalk repair agreement that was prepared by our attorneys. Towards the tail end of that, we'll move into the construction RFP phase, where they will put together documents to get proposals from construction firms that will come in and eventually do the work in the phase 3 construction phase. In that phase, Stantec will be responsible for inspection of the work and logging of all the quantities, doing daily reports, and then forwarding the actual costs onto the city so that we can then invoice residents who chose to participate. And then there's a closeout phase where we finalize documentation and final payments.
Very good. I'm glad that we're moving forward on this, Mr. Fordyce. Questions for our DPW director? Mr. Gearbaugh.
Oh, you didn't raise my hand, you just assumed, because I moved it.
ESP.
Thank you. Just my question, when we're talking about how this is going to work, I noticed the professional service agreement. So we identify who owns which piece of the sidewalk. We tell an homeowner, you need to replace that. So if they don't go with our signing this professional agreement, whatever, the way, because I'm kind of reading this, it's sort of is like a volunteer type thing.
Right.
Are we going to go ahead and replace it anyways and then assess the property? Or how does that work?
No, so this sidewalk repair agreement is a voluntary agreement. The property owners can look at the proposed cost and the convenience of having our contractor do it, sign this document, we'll take care of it, send them an invoice. If they don't pay the invoice, then we assess it onto their taxes. If they choose not to do this, then it'll go into our standard code enforcement process, where we'll send them notices and, it escalates, and eventually it could result in, say, a court order, and then we might go in and do the work, and it's a much messier process. So I'm hoping that a lot of people will go with this voluntary one, but it is a voluntary agreement.
So we have to be prepared to move into another legal process if we have to.
Yeah, and that's somewhere in the details of that scope of work. There would be a list of properties that did not sign this agreement.
And then the interest rates that I was looking at here, 6% and 3%, those are standard, or those are?
Those are by charter.
By charter?
Yeah.
Okay. I was just curious at those rates. And then the last thing, what was it, the question I was going to have? When do we think that they'll have this available for us to actually start laying cement?
I don't know the actual start of construction, but the whole thing is supposed to be wrapped up by the end of October. So
we may not hit construction season until next spring?
No, this will be
October.
Oh,
this October.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it'll be a late construction.
Great. I think that's it for me right now. Oh, no, the one thing I would like, if we do have this agreement like this, that we have examples of how that is going to cost the homeowner if they buy property. We should have some financial examples, because 6% interest, depending on how much they have to cost and pay out, and then there's penalties in here if you don't pay within so many months and so forth. I would like to have either Joanne or Mickey Joe provide something to go with this document so people understand exactly what the cost implication is.
So an example, if they needed $1,000 worth of sidewalk and let it go to the special assessment, what that would end up costing.
What that impact's going to hit on that piece versus just paying it out front.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Gearba. Additional questions for Mr. Fordyce? Ms. Dillon?
Have you established the quadrants?
No, that's part of the planning phase, looking at the existing survey data and finding a nice group of close together projects so that we can have a nice contiguous work zone.
Okay.
So that's part of the first phase of this proposal.
Okay. And I guess I just wanted to clarify what Mr. Gearba had just asked, which is, this is voluntary. You're going to tell people, we think that, this sidewalk is your responsibility.
We're going to tell people, you need to fix your sidewalk, and here's a convenient way if you choose.
Okay. I guess that was my avenue of, are we giving them an opportunity to sort of say, no, that's okay, I think it's your fault, and I'm not going to deal with it?
We certainly will review things like that. I mean, so, like I said, we're going to go out and inspect
Right.
and make that determination. Maybe we would miss something. Certainly, there are some unique historical issues where some long past city activity damaged the sidewalk and the homeowner has a record of that, and I don't have knowledge of that. So, those kind of things will come up where we'll go through on our inspection and say that's a private responsibility, and then send them a notice, and they'll say, hey, hold on, we got this agreement from 75 years ago that says, So I've actually run into those kind of things. So I expect there'll be some issues like that where, maybe we get it wrong, or maybe when we pull up the sidewalk, well, lo and behold, there is a tree root under there, even though it's 75 feet away from the tree.
Right.
So there'll be some fine tuning as construction, as the project proceeds, but in general, that determination will be made in that first planning phase.
Okay. That's good to know. Thank you very much.
Additional questions, Ms. Mitchell?
Thank you, Mr. Fordyce. I want to look at an example in our neighborhood. So we had our sidewalks ground down to level them out.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a house that I walk by almost every day. It has a tree right next to it, and within a year, it has already lifted like 4 to 5 inches. And so what is the scope in that situation? You said, you mentioned a tree root, but
Yeah.
is anything looked at so they can take the slab out and put another one in, but unless they address
Right.
the pun root cause, then it's just going to happen again. So
Right, yeah, we would remove the roots.
you would remove it.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
And we look at that also and make sure that it's not a structural root and try to assess whether the tree will be able to sustain that sort of
Excellent.
stress.
Okay.
So-
And so is there an extra charge for the homeowner if it's a tree root removal? Or is that like, oh, that's on city land and we planted it and we're accepting?
Yeah, the city tree ones will be the city
Okay.
responsibility.
Okay.
Yeah, and generally in a project of this size, that would be an incidental cost, the removal. So it wouldn't
Okay.
affect the unit cost.
Thank you.
Anything further?
Just one other question.
Yes.
I've noticed a couple other, where they actually did the grinding of the sidewalks, and now it's smooth where you go over it, but the tree roots have heaved both slabs.
Mhm.
There's a couple of those. Are those going to be addressed where you can actually tell where the tree slab, now you kind of have a smooth way to go over it, but it's still an issue. The sidewalks aren't really flat.
If those slopes are still ADA compliant, then we would leave those. As long as there's not a trip hazard and the slopes are ADA compliant, that would stay. But things that have changed since the survey was done will be assessed during this inspection. But that's not going to be a citywide inspection. That's going to be just in the project area.
And will we be contacting the former company that ground down? Because didn't they guarantee?
Yeah, so if you want to give me those locations as you see them, we can put together a package, because, yeah, they do guarantee that work.
Okay,
We'll
great.
come back and grind them again.
Sounds good. Thank you.
That would be worth messaging on in the upcoming FYI newsletter too. The fact that they guarantee work on their grinding, and so if people have issues or concerns, they should contact DPW, because we can guarantee that will be resolved.
Yeah.
It's a good promise to share with our constituents. Is there anything further on this motion? No, that's been properly moved by Gearboss, seconded by Mitchell to acknowledge receipt and to approve an award. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. We move on to new business item 17-120. This is training consortium.
Mayor, point of clarification.
Yeah.
I think we've got
the
a,
motion was simply to
just for
acknowledge
receipt.
receipt.
Oh, okay.
But I was going to go with it, so
Okay, no.
I will now move.
Well,
to
you kind of
approve it.
did go with it, but all right. So that was, let me actually, just so that we're very clear, I'm going to call for that vote again. It was a motion moved by Gearboss, seconded by Mitchell to acknowledge receipt. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. Now, would someone like to make a motion
I'll move
to
to
award and approve?
An award.
Okay, excellent. That's been moved by Gearboss. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilwoman Dillon. Apologize for the mistake. Is there any discussion? We'll proceed to vote then. All those in favor of approving and awarding signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Fordyce.
Thank you.
Appreciate your work on this. We move on to new business item 17-120. This is training consortium. This will be a motion to acknowledge receipt of the memo dated July 7th, 2017 from Police Chief Rennick, and to approve and authorize or not to approve the clerk and mayor to sign the Southern Michigan Criminal Justice Training Consortium Agreement.
Move to acknowledge, approve, and authorize.
Thank you, Councilmember Seo, and seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Tahar. Chief Rennick, would you care to make any comment this evening?
Just real quickly, this was one of the items that I brought up in our budget meeting. This is a way to provide training at a very reduced cost to the police department. And you have the agreement before you. And I guess I'm just seeking authorization from you to have yourself and the clerk sign this for our police department.
Excellent. There are questions for Chief Rennick? Mayor Pro Tem Tahar and then Councilwoman Dillon.
Yes, thank you. So I inferred from your memo that the funds that would be spent on this would otherwise be spent in other ways on training, but this buys us a more cost-effective approach to training? Is that correct? Okay.
Right, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Dillon?
Piggybacking on cost, so what exactly is the cost of this?
I can't give you an exact cost. All I can do is give you an estimate, and it's because our 302 funds change every 6 months. But historically, over the past 4 years, it's roughly $1,500 for half our 302 funds. So that's the number I gave you. It could be $1,498 one 6-month period. It could be $1,507 the next. So it varies, and that's all based on the amount of money that we get from the state.
Oh, thank you for that clarification, because I wasn't sure whether there was a fee and you had to pay use half of your 302 funds to pay for it. So they just take whatever those half of your fees are, no matter what those funds are?
Well, when you
Is
say
that-
they take,
Well,
they do send us a bill for half our 302 funds, and what happens is, on a 6-month basis, we get a check from the state, and then we would submit half of that amount to the training consortium.
Okay.
And we would do that twice a year, which roughly would be about $1,500 total.
okay. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Additional questions? Mr. Seo.
Does that create any problems for the police department in reporting the expenditure of 302 funds?
No, actually, it makes it easier. What they do is they just take we'll use $1,500. We can put down $1,500 that we paid to the consortium, divide it by the total number of hours that we spent there, and then we get an average cost per hour, and then list it on the 302 fund, and it's actually much easier.
Anything further? Then we'll proceed to vote. It's been properly moved by Seo, seconded by Tahar, to acknowledge receipt and to approve and to authorize. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. The motion carries unanimously. Chief Rennick, thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. We move on to the discussion portion of our agenda. First up is commission, committee, and task force reports from council members. Ms. Tahar and then Mr. Seo.
Yes, I'm happy to report that members of the Arts and Culture Committee today reviewed submissions from local artists for the next 4 Art Around Saline pieces that will be displayed around the city.
Mr. Seo.
I'm happy to report that our Police Advisory Committee met for the first time, I think a week ago or 2 weeks ago now. We're going to meet again this week, and we've set out a schedule to meet several times through the next few months. Our goal is to try and come to City Council with a report and recommendation at the September 18th council meeting.
Very good. Ms. McClellan?
Parks Commission meets tomorrow. We're going to discuss some of the options to bring forward to City Council about the parking at People's Park. So if you'd like to join us and help give your opinions on that, we would appreciate it. Also, Green Thumb Award nominations are still being accepted. You can get nominations online and here at City Hall. And you'll see the signs around town as well. So,
Good. Ms. Mitchell?
I have a report from the Historic District Commission. We have an attempt to be more proactive with our residents in those districts so that as they are planning their renovations that are overseen by the city, that they are aware of those regulations well ahead of time. So we have approved a brochure to go out to all homeowners in those districts, and the effort will be to continue to reach out to them.
Very good. If there are no additional commission, committee, or task force reports, how about reports or other announcements? Mr. Gearbaum?
I'd just like to thank Mr. Fordyce and City Manager Campbell for getting the roof on the woodshed out at the Rentschler Farm. It was damaged last spring, or a year ago last spring, and it looks very good, matches right with the building, and fortunately, insurance costs covered it, so what's even better yet, now we're just hoping to get the bell and the cupola back up on top of that, so it'll be back to normal. And I do want to encourage everyone, August 11th and 12th, there will be the yard sale out at the Rentschler Farm. There's still booths available for that. It's a big event. We usually get about 1,000 or more people that actually show up, so hoping to help fund our operations. Thank you.
Other reports or announcements? Just real quickly, I've been looking at a stream of, yeah.
Mayor, I just wanted to let you know, as finance officer for the drug task force, I'm pleased to report that the task force has paid the city back in full.
Very good. Excellent. We appreciate that. I was looking at a string of emails on my phone late last night and earlier today, but the co-chairs and executive committee members of the Saline Celtic Festival were very pleased and appreciative that many of you and your families were able to attend this weekend, but more importantly, they were very pleased with how successful the event was. We don't have official numbers yet, but we had a lot of people come through the gates, especially on Saturday, and it stands to be probably one of our better years. Sold out of T-shirts, got great feedback from food vendors, from the merchants, from a number of athletes and people who competed in the dance competitions. So overall, I think it was a very successful event. And once all the numbers are reconciled, that group looks forward to coming back and telling you specifically how the 2017 Saline Celtic Festival turned out. If there are no additional announcements, how about an update from our wastewater treatment superintendent, Mr. Scull?
Since the last council meeting, we had Webster come in for their second round of sampling. They collected water samples and air samples from various processes in the plant. Tomorrow, we will remove the odor logs and mail them in, so they'll have all the data to come up with a report. We also received the media to rebuild the Dual scrubber, but since it was required to be online during the second round of odor studies, we had to postpone redoing that. I also got a verbal quote. I've been on them for a written quote from USP Technology for chemical addition. They're looking at hydrogen peroxide, a very strong hydrogen peroxide, not something you put in your ears. It's 30% as an oxidizer to remove the sulfides in the water. That should remove the odors before they have a chance to form. And that's where we're at.
Great. Between our last council meeting and this council meeting, do you have any idea of how many calls or emails were sent to you or left at the plant regarding?
I believe there's only been 2 at the plant and 7 from Tetra Tech.
Okay. Very good. Appreciate your work. Keep us up to date. Of course, we'll be reviewing the results of Webster Environmental's analysis very soon. If there's nothing further on the wastewater treatment plant, Clerk Royal, do you want to begin a discussion on Oakwood Cemetery headstone restoration? You did provide in our packet a memo that Mr. Smith prepared when he was at Clark Hill, dated August the 15th, 2013.
Well, I have been contacted by Mr. Lane asking about restoring some of the headstones in the older section of Oakwood Cemetery. And so I pulled that out, and I had also asked other clerks, and basically, for most of the clerks, everybody says don't touch them because everybody has a different opinion. So there is a book out by a gentleman from Canton Township. There was regarding how to repair cemetery headstones. But I spoke with him, and he says it really depends on how it is worded in your cemetery perpetual care fund on whether you repair these, and also the city attorney. So I contacted the city attorney, so hopefully he can help spread some light on it.
Would you care to make any additional comments, Mr. Smith?
Sure. Basically, you don't own the headstones. Your perpetual care arrangements indicate you don't maintain the headstones, the foundations under them, or anything else. They belong to the families. And so any work on those would have to be done only with the family's permission. You'd have to contact the heirs and get permission from them. It's also my understanding that there's a difference of opinion as to whether they ought to be repaired or whether they're a better historical resource if they aren't. So there's not unanimity of views on that, but you don't own them. You have to get permission from the owners.
Mr. Smith, would I be correct if we changed some verbiage relating to our perpetual care fund that said the city would repair or maintain headstones, i.e. or specifically older headstones? That doesn't negate or change the fact that it's still private property.
That's correct.
So we would still be, the potential still exists that we would encounter trouble.
Now, you could going forward saying we reserve the right to do that, and if you place a headstone, we have that right going forward, and there are some cemeteries that do that to make sure that they're properly maintained and restored. But for those that already exist, you'd have to get the permission of the families.
Mr. Gearbox.
A couple questions on that. In terms of damage to headstones that are a result of our neglect as caretakers, or say a branch falls off a tree and destroys one because we didn't take the tree down, we have some due diligence to fix that, don't we?
We may have some obligation to do that, but again, we should contact the family to determine their wishes to the extent we can.
And if we can't connect, can we do any kind of public notification or something?
Yes, I've suggested that there's a public notification process you can go through if it's not possible to notify them. One community that's going to have a lot of those to address, you may have read about Grand Haven. They had 103-mile-an-hour winds that destroyed a number of trees in their cemetery. In fact, 2.5 weeks later, their cemetery wasn't reopened yet, that the damage was so extensive. So they are going to be going through that process and trying to determine how to address a lot of the damage to grave markers.
Okay. Yeah, from my perspective, and this was brought up by our Historical Society, and part of the thing is there are some stones that are just on the brink of falling over or could be addressed. And I know that, and I have relatives that are in Moorville Cemetery where they took the stones and attempted to try and lay them down, and they've had more damage done to those stones by leaving them on the ground than putting them upright or fixing it from that perspective. And I think, and this is more to the council, I would like to look at something from a perspective of something in the old cemetery that are in excess of maybe 150 years or whatever from that perspective, because if we lose those stones, that is a major part of our historic, and some of those stones are really unique and are some of our founders for our city in that aspect. So if we need to look into it or somehow address it, I appreciate it if maybe the cemetery task force takes that on. Or
yeah, and as a matter of fact, Mr. Gearbaugh, subsequent to you sending me an email requesting that this be a discussion item, I had a conversation with the city clerk and with the deputy clerk, and actually subsequent to your email, another issue came up with an individual who contacted the clerk's office about a damaged headstone. So I think maintenance and repair to old headstones, as well as what our policy is when we damage a headstone will be discussed at the next Oakwood Cemetery Task Force, and subsequent recommendations will come to council.
Perfect. Thank you, I appreciate that.
Ms. Mitchell?
As a member of the Historic District Commission, this was brought before us, and I said, we don't really have a dog in this fight, but we had the conversation anyway. And I think there is certainly value in preserving the very old part of our cemetery and looking in the future, how do we protect and make enjoyable and have it as a resource for our community. I want to point out some of the research that I did after visiting Oakwood with Bob Blaine. There is a state of Michigan book about historic cemeteries, and I have found that extraordinarily useful. I certainly have not read the whole thing yet, but that's an excellent resource, and we've used a similar guide for the historic district. So.
Thank you. Well, then we'll transition to the last discussion item, which is the police chief search. I'll kick this one off, and then if you want to add some things, I would welcome that. So, of course, some of this information will not be new to certain members of council, specifically Mayor Pro Tem Tahar and Councilmember Gearbaugh, because they were members when we conducted the last comprehensive search for a police chief, which resulted in the hiring of Larry Rennick. But I think that the process that my predecessor, Mayor Driscoll, laid out and initiated in 2012 was actually a very good one. And so I would like to mirror that, or it's the recommendation of both the city manager and I that we mirror that again. And so what happened is the city hired a consulting, a search firm, to assist with the collection of resumes, the screening of candidates, and the interviewing of candidates. But that individual who we utilized in 2012 first organized and facilitated a public forum, which I think is very valuable. And I actually am very emphatic that we do that again. I don't know if Mr. Gearbaugh or Mayor Pro Tem Tahar recall that, but it was on a weekday night here for about an hour and a half, and the public, not only our employees, but the public was encouraged to attend and offer feedback in terms of what sort of qualities and attributes and skills were they looking for in their next police chief. And so that information was gathered and then made part of the search process. The formal search process in 2012 consisted of Mayor Driscoll, myself, and then Councilmember Rhodes, along with our consultant, city manager Campbell, and then Police Chief Ed Toth from the city of Chelsea, who does a marvelous job, and he's actually a Saline native. So that group screened the resumes and then narrowed it down to probably about 14 or 15 candidates, interviewed those candidates, and then made a recommendation to discharge a certain number of individuals to city council. And then, of course, we had a special meeting. The public was invited to that special meeting and encouraged to attend that meeting, again, to provide feedback. The candidates were interviewed, and then at a subsequent meeting, we made a decision as a body. I thought that was a really solid, a really good process. And so we would like to mirror that again. Mr. Campbell has actually been doing a lot of work subsequent to Chief Rennick announcing his retirement, reaching out and reviewing consulting firms. And perhaps at this time you want to make a comment in regards to that.
Sure, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just real quickly, I've received 3 proposals that were some firms that I've been familiar with over the years. One, of course, is the Michigan Municipal League, who conducts executive searches all over the state, and I think maybe even maybe some out of state. At least they provide that as on their website, but for advertising positions. But they do a whole host of executive searches, and police chiefs is one of them. They have what's kind of a 3 choices that you can choose from, with almost not necessarily an a la carte, but with various choices that you could make in various ranges. So, and then the Mercer Group, who's they're an out-of-state firm, but they do a lot of all across the country, and they do a lot of police chief searches as well as other executive searches. And then SGR, Strategic Government Resources, another out-of-state firm that, again, similar to the Mercer Group. As the mayor and I discussed, the thought was, again, to have this as a discussion item this evening, and then bring back at a subsequent council meeting for you all to consider, one, the proposed process as well, and if you concurred with what we're recommending, then potentially to go forward with awarding one of these 3 proposals.
I'm sorry.
Please.
What is the third group that you...
SGR.
SGR. Okay.
Strategic Government
Resources.
Oh, thank you.
Yep. Any questions, any concerns about that? Ms. Dillon?
So as a body, will we decide which of these 3 entities?
You'll actually be deciding 3 things. You'll be deciding which entity to hire to consult and assist. You'll be approving the members of a search committee, and you'll be approving a process. So again, those 3 things. And again, my hope would be a process that mirrors pretty closely what was implemented by my predecessor in 2012, which had a heavy focus on community engagement and soliciting advice and insights from the people we serve. Okay. Does that sound good, Ms. McClellan?
Yeah, I think that's smart. Just a question about the firms. Are they all 3 in the ballpark price-wise for their services, or?
MML is, sorry, what's that? So MML has a price range of, again, the basic, which I would propose we would go towards the top, but they do have the 12,500, and then it goes all the way up to, which is called the enhanced service, is 19,000. And what they also call a typical service includes 17,000. So, and then the Mercer Group is the fee is 16,500 plus, I believe, 8,000, not to exceed out-of-pocket expenses. And then the most expensive is the SGR, Strategic Government Resources, at 18,500 for the services, and again, not to exceed 8,500 for out-of-pocket expenses. Okay. So, and if I could, just real quickly, please. I said this, 5.5 years ago, and I'll say it again. I mean, I truly do believe, hiring the right police chief is just as important as hiring the right city manager. And that, I mean, certainly we have a great, obviously the last department head sitting here is there, it's important to have a very good Parks and Rec director as well. But when it comes to these positions and what can occur, you want to have a solid person in that position. So again, I do believe that it's critical that we do our best with all that we have to recruit the top-notch person wherever they may be, whether they be 10 minutes away or across the country. I think it's critical to utilize some folks that a search firm that does this and does a good job of it.
So here's what I would add. If you have questions for the city manager, feel free to call him, email him, text him. If you'd like to look at these proposals, they're available in his office for review. You'll note from the city manager's weekly communique or a preceding email that he sent that Chief Rennick is retiring on, is it November 25th?
Honor before the 25th of November.
So that means we need to start to move expeditiously on this. So this is likely to appear as an action item at the next council meeting. Again, to Councilwoman Dillon's point, not only to hire a firm, but also to establish a process and to appoint members of a hiring task force. Okay? Ms. Tahar.
Yes, so regarding the consultants or the search firms, will we have access to evaluative information about them or references, or what kind of, I guess the question is, what kind of vetting has taken place?
I think that for whomever the city manager recommends, we can certainly provide some references, we can certainly provide some work history. I don't think that's a problem. In fact, I think that's appropriate and prudent.
If I may, we've actually started that process already based on the information they've provided in their proposals.
Okay. And one more?
Please.
If I could. Are there any, is there any advantage to having an organization, a Michigan organization, since we are in Michigan? Are there special needs or special factors that being very familiar with the state would give as an advantage, or just the lack of knowledge of that be a disadvantage for a search firm?
I
don't know.
I've reviewed the documentation and did a little bit of independent research on my own. Certainly, there'd be no debate that Michigan Municipal League has the most institutional knowledge about our state, our culture. But the Mercer Group and SGR have also worked extensively in the state of Michigan and the Midwest. At least that's my understanding. You can correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, they've worked all over the country, but so to that point, I mean, certainly, yes, I would agree with the mayor that the MML, as you would expect and hope, that they would have the most extensive knowledge about the state. So that is certainly one of the components to consider, but also one of the things to consider is how many police chief searches have they done overall, and how specialized are they or are they not, type of thing.
Right. Yeah, I guess my question, thank you. My question goes more to how much weight to give that Michigan advantage, if it's an advantage.
Well, and to
So
Mr. Campbell's point, of the
that's
three
helpful.
proposals that he referenced, Michigan Municipal League probably has the least amount of experience in police chief searches. Certainly less than the Mercer Group.
Sure.
So, okay, thank you, that's
Yep.
helpful.
Okay, folks, that will be coming back then as an action item at our next meeting on August 7th, excuse me. And again, if you want to look at those proposals, feel free to swing by the city manager's office or contact him with any questions. Is there any other business to come before Saline City Council this evening? Ms. Dillon?
I have a question. Included in our packet was once again another one of the Department of Licensing for liquor forms.
No, that should have been in the last one.
This was in my packet this time.
Must have been a straggler in your mailbox.
Okay.
Yeah.
Our apologies.
That's okay. My question would just be, in the future, is it possible to tell us what business this is?
I did receive a couple this week, so I have a memo set to go
Oh,
to
thank
to
you
let
very
know.
much.
So I must have missed that when I put your packet together.
That's okay.
What does it say at the top, though? I can probably tell you.
This is 405 East Michigan.
Yes, it's Cancun.
This is Cancun.
Transfer of
Okay.
Cancun.
Okay.
Yeah. Anything else? Please note upcoming meetings, but at this time, I would ask for public comment. Under the Open Meetings Act, any citizen may come forward at this time, make comment or question to City Council. This public comment period will be limited to 3 minutes per person. Anyone who would like to speak is requested, but not required to state his or her name and address for the record.
Mary Hess. About 6 years ago, I spent the Christmas holidays in Daytona. And over Christmas, I had called the local Methodist church as far as Christmas services. And they said, yes, no problem, I can take communion even though I'm not a member. And I said, well, where are you at? And this very nice lady's voice said, follow the light. And we went outside, and sure enough, here are some strobe lights in the sky. And it was a very, very neat feeling. And of course, we went on to church, and my son, of course, thought it was wonderful. I am a trustee at the Methodist Church, and last year this was brought up, and this year I have planned on, I was appointed to represent the trustees in finding out information for us to be able to do this lighting at the Methodist Church at Christmas Eve for the 3 services that they have. And of course, I was asked questions to find out as far as the air traffic control impacting on the neighborhood, noise, parking, and quite a few other things. I asked the city as far as how this could work, and I was told that I would have to get a variance. And Mr. Rubel gave a list of a report by the consultant, city consultant would be $450, and for him to attend, to attend the ZBA meeting would be $200. Now, I was on council for 22 years and ZBA for probably over 15 of them. I hope you have the comment that I would like to read. This is on behalf of the church. We're not asking for special treatment, but are requesting fair treatment. The sign regulations in the city code book intent was not to prohibit, but to ensure safe and reasonable rules. I believe there should be a special use permit for such things as block parties, graduation parties, 5K runs, bike runs, or other short events. The permit may cover length of time, insurance, city labor costs such as DPW or police department, safety, noise, parking, impact on surrounding areas or other issues. This is not a permanent variance, as most ZBA rulings are. This particular thing is a 7-hour permit.
Thank you, Mrs. Hess. Are there additional public comments?
John Olson. I guess this one falls under one of those things where you don't necessarily want everybody to know this is what you do, but one of the things I've done in the past is mapped graveyards. And now we don't own the headstones, but could a second marker be placed in front of the, just a small plaque on the ground or something to maintain the integrity of the information? The other thing is a lot of the limestone ones just kind of deteriorate to the point, I don't know how you'd fix them anyway without replacing them. So that might be an alternative to be able to have the information still be there about whoever has passed and put there. The other thing is some of them are just plain gone, and it might be nice to put a plaque in the ground. I don't know if there's a Friends of the, Oakwood Cemetery or something like that that could work through something like that. But just for all it's worth, that's my thoughts.
Very good. Thank you, John. Additional citizen comments? Well, Mr. Olson, we appreciate those comments, and like I said earlier, many of these issues will be discussed at our next Oakwood Cemetery Task Force meeting. And to Mrs. Hess's comments, first of all, I appreciate and respect anybody who gets involved in their faith community. That's how I got my start as financial secretary, then vice president and president. I got more out of it than I gave. That's for sure. And I understand the frustration and the angst. I do want to reiterate for the record, I sent you emails on July the 12th and July the 17th offering my assistance, offering to help facilitate a meeting between you, any member of the Methodist Church's leadership team and city staff to talk about ways that we could move forward and potentially resolve this. And I still would welcome a phone call, email, or text message. I would be delighted to set something up. But I think there could be a way to resolve this, and we would be happy to have a discussion with you pertaining to your interest in this request specifically. If there's nothing further to be brought before City Council this evening, I would entertain a motion to move into closed session, although it would be my preference, and I did confer with the city manager, that the motion state that we will not reconvene, because we don't have anything else to discuss this evening. But I'm at the mercy of whoever makes the motion and seconds it. So at this time, the chair would entertain a motion to convene into closed session to consider material exempt from discussion or disclosure by state or federal statute, in particular for the purpose of conducting a personnel evaluation of the city manager, and he requested closed session. The city will not reconvene into regular session at the conclusion of the closed session.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Gearboss, seconded by CO. The clerk will please call the roll.
Ms. Mitchell?
Yes.
Mr. Har?
Yes.
Mr. Gearbaugh?
Yes.
Ms. McClellan?
Yes.
Mr. CO?
Yes.
Ms. Dillon?
Yes.
Mayor Morrow?
Yes, so we are convened into closed session at 9:45 PM.
Mr. Smith?
Got me.